In this video, I want to show you how to paint an Ork Big Mek with Shokk Attack Gun. We'll start with looking at how we can paint a more complicated looking miniature, and then break it down into easy to follow steps, including all the basics and techniques you need so you have the confidence to get your own painted. You'll not only learn that painting characters can actually be fun, but I'll also show you how to paint orc skin, some of the different clan colours, and if you stick around until the end, I'll show you how to paint the cool energy effects on the Shokk Attack Gun. My name's Michael and welcome to TableTopReady, and as you know, I'm a huge fan of orcs, and it's about time we painted a Big Mek with Shokk Attack Gun so you can get your own painted. All the paints and brushes I use will be shown on the screen as I use them, and they'll also be listed in the description along with links to my favourite hobby tools and equipment you see me using. And before we get started, we'll first have to get our miniatures ready for painting, which involves building them using sub-assemblies and getting them undercoated. And you can use whatever undercoat colour you want, the steps are still the same. And if you want to learn more about getting your miniatures ready for painting, I've got a dedicated video on the channel that covers sub-assemblies and undercoating your miniatures in depth. So when you're ready, we can get started and learn how to paint a Big Mek with Shokk Attack Gun for games of Warhammer 40,000. In this first section, I want to talk about making a complicated miniature more manageable, and then we'll talk about how to get them painted. When we see a miniature like this, it can get overwhelming, so the best thing to do is to break it down into different groups of details, which I'll be doing for this tutorial. This stops us getting overwhelmed, so we can focus on just enjoying painting our characters, and the first place to start is with all the gubbins and metal details. For this, we're using lead belcher, and for best results we want to thin our paint, and I find an equal amount of water does the trick. We also want to remove excess paint from our brush onto paper towel first to give us more control when painting. Then once you're ready, keep your brush moving and try not to go over any areas you've already painted to prevent creating any unwanted texture whilst the paint is still drying. And because we thinned our paint, it won't have covered so well, so let's repeat the process and apply another layer. This lets us build up to a solid colour without losing any detail. Just make sure to let each layer fully dry first before doing another one. Once you're done with your first colour, let's use foreground copper to pick out some details we think would look good, and that will help to break up the silver. Then we want to use an equal mix of lead belcher and Abaddon black for a darker metal on the orbs and smaller details around our mech. Again, making sure to always build up to a solid colour to give us a great foundation for anything we do after. I know how intimidating some miniatures can be, but if we take our time and have a plan, you'll see that it's not that scary, and as long as we practice the basics and fundamentals, you'll have an amazing looking miniature. Now we have our metallic colours painted, we want to start bringing out the details, creating definition. One of the best ways to do this for our gubbins is with a shade, so let's first use some Nuln Oil. And when using any kind of shade, we want to use enough to cover our details comfortably, and not so much it pulls up in areas we don't want it to. When our wash is fully dried, the other shade we want to use is Agrak Surf Shade for the more copper details. Then when you're done, you'll be able to see how this has helped to bring out all those shapes and details, making them easier to see. To help bring out the details even more, we can do a dry brush, which is a nice easy way to pick out edges and raise details even more. We're using Stormhouse Silver, and we first want to work the paint into our brush before removing as much as we can on our paper towel until it's no longer coming off the brush. Once you're ready, let's move our brush rapidly across details, so these are the only areas paint will deposit, leaving recesses and shallow areas untouched. Take your time doing this and build your highlights up slowly, as we don't want to overpower what you've already done. After you're done with the dry brush, we've finished our gubbins, and we can move on to getting all the other materials painted. The next group of details to paint are all the different materials which can get painted all at the same time, just like we did with our gubbins. So the best thing to do when painting our materials is to get all your base colours painted first, and choose what colours we want everything to be. Even though you can paint your materials any colour you want, I'm painting the trousers Administratum Grey. For his top I'm using the Fang. Then after that let's use Abaddon Black for his boots, and Mournfang Brown for any straps and belts. When painting the materials for the gun's vacuum tube, we can use Rakarth Flesh and Rhinox Hide. finishing up with some corn red for the patches. Now we're done deciding what colours we want all the materials, we can create our definition. For this I want to create a wash thinning down Agrak Surf shade with an equal amount of lime in medium. This is going to weaken the strength of the shade so it doesn't overpower any colours we use it over. We want to apply the wash in exactly the same way as we did our shades, and making sure to let everything fully dry before doing anything else. It's now time for our highlights again, and we can do a dry brush, but I also want to show you how we can do some line highlights as well. So the idea behind highlighting is to bring out areas, raise details and all those edges to draw our attention to them and to make these features stand out. The most prominent way of highlighting and the one we most associate with it is the line highlight, and it's this highlight I want to show you. Again, make sure to thin your paint, and if we remove excess paint on some paper towel first, it will help to prevent those thick blobby lines. We're highlighting all the materials at the same time using Screaming Skull, and we just need to take our time painting thin lines along edges and along raised folds. If you want help with the highlighting and want to know what helped me get better, then go check out my dedicated video showing you how. Now we're done highlighting all of our materials, we can move on to getting the Ork and Gretchin skin painted. If we're painting orcs, then we need to learn how to paint green skin, so let's start with the Ork flesh for our base colour, and for the Gretchin let's use Scarsnet green. We can then start to create our definition for the Ork and Gretchin, thinning down some Beltane green with an equal amount of lime in medium and applying this over the skin. If you want to add more depth and deepen those recesses, we can use Beltane green as it is and apply this directly into these areas. Once that's done, let's neaten up our Ork and Gretchin skin with the base colours we started with. Now let's lighten the more raised areas and features on the mech's face and skin with Ogryn camo. Build this up with even thin layers. We can go a step further, making the skin more interesting, painting Gisela flesh on ears, noses, knuckles and anywhere else we think would look good. Now we can highlight the mech skin with Krieg Khaki and the Gretchin skin with Screaming Skull. There's obviously lots of different ways to get your Ork skin painted, and there's lots of different ways I've painted Ork skin on the channel, and this is just my favourite way of doing it. Just make sure to go out and explore how you like to paint yours. When it comes to painting the mouths, start with the tongue using Pink Horror and highlighting this with foreground pink. The teeth can be painted using Morghast Bone, and then for the highlights paint thin lines using Screaming Skull towards the tips. Now we've done the Ork and Gretchin skin, it's time to choose our clan colours, which we'll do in the next section of the tutorial. It's now time to choose which clan you want your big mech to be in, and I do already have plenty of Ork tutorials on the channel showing you lots of different ways to get the different clan colours painted, so go check out the playlist I've listed in the description. For this tutorial we're going to be doing goth colours, which my own orcs belong to. So first choose where we want our clan colours to be, and for our goths we want to start with the bad and black. To create definition, let's paint some Rhinox hide directly into recesses and around details, which will also add warmth to our black. When we apply paint or a shade directly into our recesses, it's called a recess shade, which is a great way to create our definition, which is a lot less messy than if we'd used a wash. After you're done with that step, let's highlight our edges. This time let's start with a chunky highlight using Dark Reaper, and this wants to be quite a thick line so we can still see it once we've done our finer highlights after this. The next highlight is our edge highlight using Fenrizine Grey, and because we have more angled edges, we can make this easier angling our brush against an edge and run it along that edge to create our highlights. Finally, let's do a spot highlight, painting dots of Administratum Grey and all the corners where light would be more focused. One of the reasons I love to paint orcs is because of how colourful you can make them, and even if you don't want to make them a certain clan colour, you can still paint them very bright and vibrant, helping them to stand out on the tabletop. For red armour panels, start with Mephiston Red. We can make these details more interesting using a Galvor Back Red glaze, building this up towards the bottom edges. We can smooth any transition with another glaze of the colour we're working over, so here I'm using a Mephiston Red glaze. Galvor Back Red can also be used in and around details. When highlighting, first use Evil Sun Scarlet for a chunky highlight. Then we're using Fire Dragon Bright to highlight all of our edges. Now we can do our spot highlights using Ungor Flesh. If you want to paint some lighter bone coloured details, start with Wraith Bone. And we can make these more interesting with the Morghast Bone Glaze and Recess Shade. After that we can highlight these details with White Scar. In this final section of the tutorial, I want to show you how to get your Big Mek finished and how we can paint all the more fun things on our miniature. Let's start with something simple like the wires, choosing what colour you want them to be. All we need to do now is apply some Nuln Oil and then highlight them painting Screaming Skull along the length of each wire. We also want to paint those hazard stripe to wires, so let's first mix an equal amount of Avalon Sunset and Uriel Yellow together and use this for our base colour. Now we can paint some lines marking where our black stripes want to be. Then once you're happy with the placement, thicken them out, and we want to have an equal thickness for both the black and yellow stripes. Also spend time neatening things up until you're happy with how everything's looking. Now we want to apply Iyanden Yellow contrast over these wires to make them more interesting. Finish these wires again painting Screaming Skull along the length of them to highlight. It's now time to show you what everyone is here for, and that's how to paint the cool energy effects you see across the miniature. We want to make our Gretchin look like he's about to be ripped apart and sent into the warp, so let's first mix an equal amount of Skarsnik Green and Sotek Green together and glaze this towards the opening. Remember to use the Skarsnik Green glaze to create a smooth transition. Continue with the Sotek Green glaze around the feet, and let's paint the inside of the opening with Sotek Green as well. Finally, highlight the legs and feet with Blue Horror. When we're painting our characters, it's always worth spending that extra time and effort helping them to stand out against the rest of our collection. It also gives us a great opportunity to practice the more fun and interesting techniques. The lightning coming out of the orbs are painted using Sotek Green, and the Sotek Green glaze is used on the orbs to give us that cool glow effect. And the best way to approach this is to start from the middle of the orb and glaze towards the lightning, being sure to keep your layers thin so the silver still shows through. We can do a recess shade with our Sotek Green around details to help with the effect. Now we want to make the lightning lighter towards the tips, first with Temple Guard Blue and then Baharroth Blue. To finish the lightning, let's use Blue Horror to highlight the raised details, then White Scar for our spot highlights. If you want to get fancy, we can paint arcs of energy with thin squiggly lines around the base of the lightning using Temple Guard Blue. Using Blue Horror to paint little spot highlights where all these arching energy lines meet. Let's finish our Big Mek painting the red targeter first with Mephiston Red. Now paint a crosshair using Fire Dragon Bright. Then the last thing to do for our Big Mek is to paint a dot of Ungor Flesh right in the centre of the crosshair. I always love getting the opportunity to paint some orcs, and especially their characters. They're so full of character, and they let us explore the more fun things that we may not normally get to paint. So let's see how it turned out. Before we see the finished miniatures, I want to say a massive thank you to all the amazing people who've made this tutorial possible with their continued support. It really means a lot. Your generosity allows me to get all the paints, brushes and miniatures I need to make these tutorials, so I can continue to help you get better at painting. And I especially want to thank Dave Christensen, Untippo Pindando and Thermic Orpheus, who have recently become supporters or have donated to the channel. Thank you so much. If you enjoy the content here on TableTopReady and feel you get value from it, you can also help support the channel by becoming a channel member or joining my Patreon. You'll get access to our Discord, regular updates and early access to videos and tutorials. We've now finished painting our Big Mek with Shokk Attack Gun, and I hope I've been able to give you the confidence and knowledge to paint your own. I've got plenty of other tutorials on the channel showing you how to improve your painting, and lots of other tutorials on how to paint other orc units as well, so go check them out. I really do enjoy making these tutorials and I hope you find them useful. If you do, then please leave a like and let me know in the comments below. I always love hearing about your own hobby and what you thought of the video. As well, make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out future content, and I'll see you in the next video.